Spread your legs
It's
fast,
all right. You're
Jeremiah
safe now.
Blackwood choked out to his virgin giant mail-order bride on Christmas Eve, his voice breaking as he knelt in the barn's golden lamplight. But when Astrid Larson obeyed without hesitation, letting her trembling legs slide from beneath her cream dress with the mechanical precision of a woman who'd done this 1,000 times before, the lonely cowboy's hands froze over her boot. And tears he hadn't cried in 3 years burned his eyes at what he saw scarred into her skin. The mail-order catalog had promised him a virgin bride for a lonely cowboy, and he'd paid 2 months' wages for her, desperate to fill the emptiness that had consumed him since the night he buried his wife and stillborn son 3 Christmases ago. Astrid hadn't smiled when the circuit preacher married them in town an hour ago, hadn't spoken except to whisper yes when asked if she took Jeremiah Blackwood as her husband. She'd followed him home through the Christmas Eve snow like a ghost, stumbling twice until her body gave out in the barn doorway and she crumpled into the hay like her strings had been cut. Remy knelt beside her to remove her travel-worn boots, told himself he was just being kind before he'd have to do what the contract demanded, what the town expected, what his pitying brother Tobias was waiting to hear proof of come dawn. But the moment his calloused hand touched her ankle, Astrid's entire body went rigid. "I will be fast," she whispered, her voice flat and dead. "I know how men want it. Hard, quick. I will not cry. I learned not to cry." Something inside Remy's chest cracked like ice breaking. "Astrid, I'm just—" "Spread your legs fast," she murmured, repeating words in a man's voice, not Remy's voice, someone else's voice, someone who'd hurt her. "That is what he always say. I know. I will obey." And before Remy could stop her, his virgin giant mail-order bride obeyed the ghost command, letting her leg slide out, exposing her calf, her knee, her thigh. That's when the lonely cowboy saw them in the lamplight, scars circling her ankles like invisible shackles, whip marks crisscrossing her calves, burns on her inner knees, and higher, God, higher up, more scars, deliberate and precise, carved into the most intimate parts of her by someone who knew exactly how to hurt a woman where no one would see. Remy's hands started shaking so violently he had to pull them back. His virgin mail-order bride wasn't a virgin at all. She was a survivor, a woman systematically tortured, broken, trained to obey commands like spread your legs fast because hesitation meant pain and obedience meant maybe she'd survive another night. And he'd just paid money for her, bought her like cattle, brought her to his barn on Christmas Eve with every intention of using her body to feel something other than the crushing loneliness that had been suffocating him since Martha died. The horse in the stall behind them whinnied softly. Christmas Eve, snow fell through the open barn doors. The lantern flame flickered, casting shadows across Astrid's face, a face so beautiful and so destroyed it made Remy's heart physically ache. She wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on the wooden rafters, her jaw clenched, her massive body tense and waiting. This giant woman, who should have been fierce and proud, was lying in his hay like a sacrifice, her breathing shallow, her fingers digging into the straw, waiting for the lonely cowboy to become the next man who hurt her. "Please," she whispered, and the words shattered him completely. "Please just be fast. I'm strong. I can take it. Big women always can take it, they say. Just be fast and then it is done." A sob caught in Remy's throat. This was his wife now. This broken, terrified, obedient woman who'd crossed an ocean hoping America would be different, only to end up in a Montana barn on Christmas Eve with another man kneeling over her, another man who'd used the words, "spread your legs fast," like a weapon. 3 years ago, he'd held Martha's hand as she bled to death birthing their son. 3 years ago, he'd begged God to take him instead. 3 years ago, he'd buried them both and sworn he'd never feel anything again because feeling hurt too much. But this was different. This wasn't grief. This was rage. Rage at whoever had hurt Astrid, rage at himself for buying a human being, rage at a world where a woman this magnificent had to learn to spread her legs fast just to survive. The contract said he had until dawn. The preacher needed proof, bloodied sheets, consummation, duty fulfilled. His brother was waiting. The town was watching. And this virgin giant mail-order bride was lying in his barn, legs spread as commanded, waiting for the lonely cowboy to claim what he'd paid for. The lantern sputtered. The Christmas bells from town rang midnight in the distance, and Jeremiah Blackwood remained frozen on his knees in the golden light, one hand hovering over his bride's scarred leg, tears finally breaking free and sliding down his weathered face, because he'd thought he was too broken to love again. But Astrid Larson, lying in his barn hay, waiting to be hurt, had just proven him wrong. and the loneliest cowboy in Montana Territory had no idea if saving her meant condemning them both, or if this was God's cruelest gift, giving him someone to love again on the exact anniversary of the night he'd lost everything. The snow fell heavier. Dawn was 4 hours away, and time was running out for both of them. Remy's hand moved, but not toward her body. He grabbed the thick wool blanket from the horse stall and threw it over Astrid, covering her completely, hiding those scars from the lamplight like they were something sacred he had no right to see. "Don't," he said, his voice cracking. "Don't do that. Don't obey me like that." Astrid's eyes snapped to his face for the first time since they'd entered the barn. Confusion flickered across her features, then fear, raw, animal fear. "I did wrong?" Her accent was thick with panic. "I can do different, however you want. Please, just tell me how—" "No!" Remy stood up fast, backing away from her like she was on fire and he was too close to the flames. "You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't—" He pressed his palms against his eyes, trying to stop the tears, trying to breathe. "Jesus Christ, Astrid, what did they do to you?" Silence. Just the sound of snow hitting the barn roof and the horse shifting in its stall. When Remy finally looked at her again, Astrid had pulled the blanket tight around herself and was sitting up, her back pressed against a hay bale. She looked smaller somehow, despite her height, folded in on herself like she was trying to disappear. "In Norway," she said quietly. "My father, he say I am cursed, too tall, too big. I eat too much, cost too much, no man want giant wife." She stared at her hands. "When I am 19, he sell me to Herr Dahlberg, the landlord, rich man, own half the village." Remy's fists clenched at his sides. "Dahlberg say he needs strong woman for farm work. He pay my father good money. My father, he is happy. Finally, the giant daughter is useful." Her voice was flat, like she was reciting a recipe. "But Dahlberg, he do not want me for farm work. Not really." The barn felt colder. The lamplight seemed dimmer. "First night, he come to my room in servant quarters. He say, 'You belong to me now. I paid for you. You do what I say, when I say, how I say.'" Astrid's jaw trembled. "I try to fight. I'm big, I'm strong, I think maybe I can push him away. But he have 2 men with him, they hold me down. And Dahlberg, she stopped, swallowed hard. He use his belt, not to hit my face, never the face. He say marks on face look bad, make people ask questions, but legs, thighs, places no one see. He say those are his to mark, his property to brand however he want." Remy felt bile rising in his throat. "Every night for 3 months. Spread your legs fast," he say. Always the same words. "If I hesitate even 1 second, the belt come first, then him." Her voice cracked. "I learned to obey fast. I learned not to cry because crying make him angry. I learned to be still, be quiet, be fast." The horse kicked its stall door. Remy jumped. 4 months ago I find money in his desk. He was drunk, passed out in his study. I take it, all of it. I run." She looked up at Remy, her ice blue eyes finally showing something other than emptiness. Shame. "I am thief. I steal from the man who owned me. In Norway they can hang woman for that." "He didn't own you," Remy said through gritted teeth. "Nobody owns another person, not here, not anywhere." "But you pay for me too," Astrid said softly. "Mail order bride agency, they say I'm merchandise. Catalog say virgin Norwegian giant, good for work, obedient. You pay 2 months' wages. The paper we sign, it say you own me now. So I must—" "Stop!" Remy's voice was sharp. "That contract is a goddamn lie. You're not merchandise, you're not property. You're a woman who survived hell and had the courage to cross an ocean hoping for better." Astrid stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. "But the preacher, he say wives must submit to husbands. The town, they expect—" "I don't give a damn what the town expects. But dawn comes soon. The preacher, he want to see the sheet, the blood. Proof that marriage is—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Remy ran his hand through his hair, pacing now, his boots crunching in the hay. His mind was racing. The contract, the town, his brother Tobias waiting in the main house, probably sitting by the fire with his wife Clara, both of them expecting to hear that Remy had finally done his duty and moved on from Martha. The whole town had watched him become a ghost after Martha died. They'd watched him stop going to church, stop socializing, stop living. When he'd ordered a mail-order bride, everyone had been relieved. Finally, they'd said. Finally, Remy's healing. But this wasn't healing. This was hell. "What happened if there is no blood?" Astrid's voice was small. "What happened if we do not— If you do not— Then the contract is void," Remy said. "Technically, you get sent back." Astrid's entire body went rigid. Back to Norway? That's what the papers say. No. The word came out strangled. No, please, I cannot go back. Dalberg, he will find me. He will kill me for stealing, for running. Please, I will do whatever you want. I will obey. I will... Astrid, stop. Remy knelt in front of her again, but kept his distance this time. Nobody's sending you back. You hear me? Nobody. But the contract... To hell with the contract. You're staying here. You're safe here. But how? If there is no consummation, the preacher will void the marriage. The agency will demand I return or they sue you for breach. The town will... Let me worry about the town. Astrid searched his face, looking for the trap, the lie, the moment when his kindness would turn into cruelty. Because in her experience, that's what men did. They were kind until they weren't. Gentle until it served them to be brutal. Why? She whispered. Why you do this? You pay good money for wife. You are lonely. You have needs. I am here. I am yours. Why you not just take what you pay for? Remy looked at this woman, this giant, broken, magnificent woman, and felt something shift inside his chest. Something that had been frozen solid for 3 years was starting to crack. Because 3 years ago, he said slowly, I held my wife's hand while she died. And in that moment, all I could think was that I should have protected her better. Should have gotten the doctor sooner. Should have done something different. His voice broke. I couldn't save Martha, but maybe I can save you. I do not need saving, Astrid said, but her voice betrayed her. I am strong. I survive. I know you did, but you shouldn't have had to. Remy stood up. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to sleep here tonight in this barn where it's warm and safe. I'm going to sleep in the house. And come dawn, when my brother asks questions, I'll handle it. But no buts. You're exhausted. You've been traveling for 3 weeks. You collapsed the second you got here. You need rest, not... He couldn't finish the sentence. Just rest, Astrid. Please. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Remy turned to leave, but her voice stopped him at the barn door. Jeremiah? He looked back. Why you cry? She asked. When you see the scars, why you cry? Remy's throat tightened. Because nobody should have hurt you like that, and because for a second I almost did the same thing. The snow was falling harder now. The wind howled through the cracks in the barn walls. And as Remy walked out into the Christmas Eve darkness, heading toward the main house where his brother waited with questions he couldn't answer, he realized something terrifying. He had ordered a mail-order bride to fill the emptiness, to feel something again, to prove to the town, and himself, that he'd moved on from Martha. But Astrid Larsen hadn't filled the emptiness. She'd shattered it completely. And now, Remy was feeling everything all at once. Rage, grief, protectiveness, something dangerously close to love, and he had no idea how to survive it. 4 hours until dawn. 4 hours to figure out how to protect a woman who'd crossed an ocean to escape one monster, only to end up in the barn of a broken cowboy who didn't know if he was strong enough to be her salvation. The main house loomed ahead, smoke rising from the chimney. Through the window, Remy could see Tobias pacing, waiting, and Remy realized with sinking certainty the hardest part of this night wasn't over. It was just beginning. Remy stamped the snow off his boots and pushed open the door to the main house. The warmth hit him like a wall. Crackling fire, the smell of pine from the Christmas tree in the corner, cinnamon from the cider Clara had made earlier. It should have felt like home. Instead, it felt like a courtroom. Tobias was standing by the fireplace, arms crossed. His wife Clara sat in the rocking chair, knitting needles clicking softly. Both of them looked up when Remy entered, and the expectation in their eyes made his stomach turn. "Well?" Tobias said, not unkindly, but with that tone of a younger brother who'd been worried too long. "Is it done?" Remy closed the door behind him. "She's resting." Clara's needles stopped clicking. "Resting? Remy, it's your wedding night. The preacher leaves at dawn. You know what needs to happen before... I know what the contract says." Remy cut her off, sharper than he meant to. He walked to the whiskey cabinet and poured himself 3 fingers, downed it in one gulp. The burn felt good, real. Tobias exchanged a look with Clara. "Remy, we talked about this. You can't keep living like a ghost. Martha's been gone 3 years. This girl, Astrid, she came all this way to be your wife. You made a commitment." "You think I don't know that?" Remy poured another whiskey. "Then what's the problem?" Tobias moved closer, his voice gentler now. Is she not what you expected? Too tall? 2. She's perfect, Remy said quietly, and the truth of it hit him like a punch. That's not the problem. Clara set down her knitting. Then what is? Remy stared into his glass. He could see his reflection in the amber liquid, distorted and dark. 3 years ago, he'd been a different man, a man who believed in protection and promises and the sanctity of vows. Then Martha died, and that man died with her, or so he'd thought. But tonight, kneeling in that barn, seeing those scars on Astrid's skin, that man had come roaring back to life, and he was furious. She's been hurt, Remy said finally, badly, before she came here, and I can't, his voice cracked, I can't be another man who hurts her. Tobias frowned. What do you mean hurt? What happened to her? Remy told them. Not everything. Astrid's story was hers to share or keep, but enough. The scars. The way she'd obeyed his commands like a trained animal. The dead look in her eyes that said she'd stopped hoping for kindness a long time ago. By the time he finished, Clara had tears streaming down her face. Tobias was gripping the mantle so hard his knuckles were white. Jesus Christ, Tobias whispered. That poor girl. So you see why I can't... Remy gestured helplessly. I can't walk back into that barn and demand she fulfill some contract. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Clara stood up, walked over to Remy, and took his face in her hands. You're a good man, Jeremiah Blackwood. You know that? I'm not. I bought her, Clara. Paid money for a human being like she was livestock. I'm no better than... Stop. Clara's voice was firm. You didn't know, and the moment you did know, you stopped. That's what matters. But the contract... Damn the contract, Tobias said, surprising them both. If that preacher has a problem with it, he can take it up with me. Remy looked at his brother. You do that? Lie to the preacher? Risk the town's gossip? For you? For that girl out there who's been through hell? Tobias nodded. In a heartbeat. Something tight in Remy's chest loosened just a fraction. Clara was already moving, grabbing linens from the chest by the stairs. I'll make up the guest room for her. She can't sleep in the barn all night, Remy. It's Christmas Eve. It's freezing. She's safe there, warm. I put extra blankets. She needs a real bed, hot food, a woman's kindness. Clara was already heading for the door, throwing a shawl over her shoulders. I'll go get her. Clara, wait! But she was already gone, disappearing into the snowy night with the determination of a woman on a mission. Tobias poured himself a whiskey and handed Remy another. They stood by the fire in silence for a moment, the weight of the night settling over them. You know, Tobias said finally, when you ordered that mail-order bride, I thought you were making a mistake. Thought you were trying to replace Martha, and that never works. You can't replace people you love. I wasn't trying to replace her, Remy said quietly. I was trying to feel something again, anything. I've been walking around dead for 3 years, Tobias. I needed to remember you're still alive? Yeah. Tobias took a sip of his whiskey. Well, seems like you found it. Just not the way you expected. Remy thought about Astrid's face in the lamplight, the way she'd obeyed that ghost command. Spread your legs fast. Without hesitation, without hope, just mechanical survival. The way his heart had shattered when she'd whispered, please just be fast. I don't know what I'm doing, Remy admitted. I don't know how to help her. I don't know if I'm strong enough to... You are. Tobias clapped him on the shoulder. You held Martha's hand while she died. You buried your son. You survived 3 years of grief that would have broken most men. If anyone can help that girl feel safe again, it's you. But what if I can't? What if I'm too broken myself? What if... The door burst open. Clara came in first, followed by Astrid, who looked even more terrified than she had in the barn. She was clutching the blanket around herself like armor, her eyes darting around the warm, decorated room like she was waiting for the trap to spring. Come in, honey, Clara said gently, guiding her toward the fire. You must be frozen. Sit here. I'll get you some hot cider. Astrid sat stiffly on the edge of the chair, her back ramrod straight, her hands gripping the blanket. She looked at Remy, and he saw the question in her eyes. Is this real? Or is this when the kindness ends? Tobias stepped forward, removing his hat. Ma'am, I'm Tobias Blackwood, Remy's brother, and I want you to know you're safe here. Whatever you've been through, whatever you're running from, it stops here. You understand? Astrid stared at him, then at Clara, who was pressing a warm mug into her hands. Then back at Remy. Why? She whispered. Why everyone being kind? What you want from me? Nothing, Remy said, and he meant it. We don't want anything from you, Astrid. We just want you to be safe. But the contract, to hell with the contract. Clara sat down beside Astrid, close but not touching. Honey, I know you don't know us yet. I know you have no reason to trust us. But I promise you, on my life, on my soul, nobody in this house is going to hurt you. You hear me?" Astrid's hands were shaking so badly the cider nearly slopped over the rim of the mug. "In Norway, people are kind at first, too. Then they are not." "This isn't Norway," Clara said firmly. "This is Montana, and you're family now. Family protects each other." "But I'm not family. I'm mail-order bride who cannot even—" She stopped, shame flooding her face. "I'm broken merchandise, damaged goods, worth nothing." Remy crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt in front of her chair, just like he'd knelt in the barn. But this time, when he looked into her eyes, he made sure she saw every ounce of truth in his. "You are not broken," he said, his voice low and fierce. "You're not damaged. You are not merchandise. You are Astrid Larson, and you survived things that would have killed most people. That makes you the strongest person in this room, huh?" A tear slid down her cheek, then another. Then she was crying, really crying, for the first time since she'd arrived. Great, heaving sobs that shook her whole body, years of pain and fear and exhaustion finally breaking free. Clara wrapped her arms around her. Tobias looked away, knuckling his own eyes, and Remy stayed kneeling there, watching this giant woman crumble, wishing he could take every ounce of her pain and carry it himself. Outside, the church bells rang 1 in the morning. 3 hours until dawn. 3 hours until the circuit preacher would come looking for proof of consummation that didn't exist. But for now, in the warm glow of the Christmas fire, with snow falling softly outside and the smell of pine and cinnamon in the air, Jeremiah Blackwood made a silent promise to the woman crying in his brother's living room. "I will protect you. I will keep you safe. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to obey a command like, 'Spread your legs fast,' ever again, even if it costs me everything." Dawn broke cold and gray over Montana, the Christmas morning sun hidden behind thick clouds that promised more snow. Remy hadn't slept. He'd spent the night in the chair by the fire, watching Astrid sleep on the sofa where Clara had settled her with quilts and pillows. She'd cried herself to exhaustion, finally surrendering to sleep around 2 in the morning. Now, as pale light filtered through the windows, Remy heard the sound he'd been dreading, hoofbeats in the snow. The circuit preacher had arrived. Tobias came down the stairs, already dressed. "I'll handle this," he said quietly. "No," Remy stood up. "This is my responsibility." They walked outside together, leaving Clara to stay with Astrid. Preacher Josiah Matthews sat tall on his horse, his breath misting in the cold air. He was a hard man, old-fashioned, the kind who believed in fire and brimstone and the letter of the law over the spirit. "Morning, Blackwood," he said, not dismounting. "I've come for the consummation proof. The contract requires it before I leave town." Remy's jaw tightened. "There isn't any." The preacher's eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me. My wife was exhausted from 3 weeks of travel. She needed rest, not—" Remy stopped himself. "We didn't consummate the marriage." Preacher Matthews's face hardened. "Then by the terms of the contract, this marriage is void. The woman returns to the agency, you forfeit your payment, and—" "She's not going anywhere," Remy said, his voice like iron. "The contract is clear. I don't care about the contract." Remy took a step forward. "That woman has been through hell. She crossed an ocean looking for safety, and I'll be damned if I send her back because some piece of paper says I had to." He couldn't finish. Wouldn't. The preacher's face flushed red. "This is blasphemy. Marriage has requirements, duties. If you refuse to fulfill them, then what?" Remy's voice rose. "You'll tell the whole town I'm not man enough? That I failed some test? Fine, let them talk. I've been the town ghost for 3 years anyway. What's a little more gossip?" Tobias stepped forward. "Preacher, with all due respect, the contract says consummation must happen by dawn. It doesn't say which dawn. They've got time to—" "Don't lawyer me, Tobias!" the preacher snapped. "The intent is clear." "The intent," Clara's voice rang out from the porch, "is to ensure a valid marriage. And I'd say my brother-in-law protecting his wife's well-being instead of using her like property is pretty valid." The preacher turned in his saddle. "Mrs. Blackwood, this is men's business." "This is human business," Clara shot back, walking down the steps with Astrid right behind her. "And that girl has been treated like livestock long enough." Astrid stood on the porch in Clara's borrowed dress, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders, her ice-blue eyes clearer than they'd been last night. She looked terrified but determined. "I stay," Astrid said, her accent thick but her voice steady. "I am Remy's wife. Contract or no contract, I stay." The preacher stared at her. "Young lady, you don't understand the legal—" I understand man who hurt me in Norway have legal paper too, Astrid said, her voice growing stronger. Paper that say he owned me. Paper that say I am his property. That paper was legal. But it was wrong. She looked at Remy. This man, he have paper that say I am his wife. But he do not treat me like property. He treat me like person. So I choose him. I choose this paper. I choose to stay. The preacher's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Remy felt something crack open in his chest, something warm and terrifying and absolutely right. So here's how this is going to work, Tobias said, his voice calm but firm. You're going to record this marriage as valid in your books, and if the agency has a problem with it, they can take it up with me. I'll pay whatever fees or penalties they want, but Astrid Larsen is staying here as Remy's wife, and that's final. The preacher looked at all of them. Remy standing tall despite his fear, Tobias beside him, Clara with her arms crossed, and Astrid on the porch looking more like a giant warrior than a broken bird. Finally, he sighed. The town's going to talk. Let them, Remy said. Preacher Matthews pulled out his record book, scribbled something, then looked up. Marriage of Jeremiah Blackwood and Astrid Larsen, recorded as valid this 25th of December, 1882. May God have mercy on you all. He turned his horse. Merry Christmas. They watched him ride away through the snow. Nobody spoke until he disappeared over the hill. Then Astrid walked down the porch steps, moving slowly toward Remy. She stopped 3 feet away, close but not touching, and looked at him with eyes that finally held something other than fear. You fight for me, she said softly. Why? Remy thought about Martha, about the son he'd never held, about 3 years of walking through life like a ghost, about kneeling in a barn last night and seeing scars that made him want to burn the world down. Because somebody should have fought for you a long time ago, he said, and they didn't, so I will now. Astrid took 1 step closer, then another. Then, slowly, carefully, she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cold and shaking, but she didn't let go. I do not know how to be wife, she whispered. I only know how to survive. Then we'll figure out the rest together, Remy said. No commands, no contracts, no spreading your legs fast or any of that, just 2 broken people trying to heal. You think we can? I don't know, but I'd like to try. Astrid squeezed his hand. Not a promise, not yet. But maybe, the beginning of one. Clara started crying again. Tobias coughed to hide his own tears. And as the snow began to fall on Christmas morning, Jeremiah Blackwood realized something that would have seemed impossible 12 hours ago. He was alive again, really, truly alive. And it hurt like hell, but it was also the most beautiful pain he'd ever felt, because spread your legs fast had been a command meant to take. But somehow, in refusing to take, Remy had been given something, infinitely more precious, a chance to love again. Not the way he'd loved Martha, easy and simple and pure, but something harder, deeper, a love built on choosing each other every single day, even when it was terrifying. Especially when it was terrifying. And as they walked back into the house together, hand in hand, broken but healing, scared but hopeful, the lonely cowboy and his giant mail-order bride began writing a new story. One where commands became choices, where survival became living, where Christmas Eve pain transformed into Christmas morning promise. It wouldn't be easy, but the best things never were. We want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from, and what time is it for you right now? Drop your location and time in the comments below. We love seeing our global family. And if this story touched your heart, make sure you turn on that notification bell so you never miss our next emotional journey. Until next time, remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose love when the world expects you to take. Merry Christmas and God bless.